January 24th, 1961. A routine Cold War patrol suddenly spirals into disaster over North Carolina, as a B-52 breaks apart with 2 live hydrogen bombs on board. One bomb arms itself almost completely. It is stopped from detonating only by a single stubborn switch. If that tiny safeguard had failed, the eastern U.S. might have faced utter devastation, and history would be very different. How did a single malfunction bring America so close to nuclear catastrophe? At 3 a.m. on January 24, 1961, a B-52G Stratofortress was flying its assigned Chrome Dome patrol, loaded with 2 live Mark 39 hydrogen bombs. After a routine mid-air refueling, the KC-135 tanker crew noticed something was wrong. They radioed the bomber. Fuel was streaming from the right wing. In less than 3 minutes, more than 5,400 gallons, over 37,000 pounds, of jet fuel vanished into the night sky. That is enough to fill an average backyard swimming pool, lost before the crew could even finish their calculations. Major Walter Scott Tulloch, the aircraft commander, immediately diverted towards Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. The numbers were grim. The leak rate meant the plane would run dry long before reaching safety. As the B-52 descended toward 10,000 feet, the imbalance from the lost fuel made the heavy bomber increasingly unstable. The right wing, drained and weakened, began to flex under the strain. In the cockpit, Tulloch and his co-pilot, Captain Richard Harden, struggled with the controls as the aircraft lurched and shuddered. First Lieutenant Adam Maddox, the third pilot, ran through emergency checklists, but the situation was deteriorating by the second. The tanker warning had triggered a desperate scramble to save both plane and crew. But as the B-52 lost altitude, the structural integrity of the right wing was failing. Every second, the odds of recovery slipped further out of reach. The patrol was no longer routine. The crew was now locked in a race against disaster, fighting to keep the aircraft aloft as the fuel numbers kept falling. The first sign of collapse came with a violent shudder. At 10,000 feet, the right wing of the B-52, drained by the fuel leak, gave way under the strain. The bomber twisted, metal groaning, then broke apart in midair. Inside, the crew had seconds to act. Major Tulloch gave the bailout order as the fuselage spun out of control. Ejection seats fired, and hatches blew. First Lieutenant Adam Maddox, unable to reach his seat, scrambled to the upper hatch, a route almost never survived. He pulled himself through as the aircraft disintegrated around him, becoming the only B-52 crewman ever to escape by that route and live. 5 men made it out alive. 3 did not. Majors Eugene Shelton and Eugene Richards and Technical Sergeant Francis Barnish were lost in the breakup. The survivors dropped into the darkness, some landing in the cold, swampy fields below. Major Tulloch parachuted into a muddy bog, his boots sinking deep in the muck. Disoriented but alive, he wandered for hours, finally walking 2 miles through the winter swamp before reaching a farmhouse at dawn. The debris field stretched nearly 2 square miles, tangled with twisted metal and burning wreckage. Local residents woke to the roar and the fire, their fields scattered with fragments of the bomber and its secret cargo. In the chaos and confusion, 2 hydrogen bombs had fallen to Earth. Their fate and the scale of the disaster that nearly followed remained hidden in the darkness, waiting to be discovered. 2 bombs separated from the falling B-52, but their journeys could not have been more different. The first bomb, torn loose in the chaos, plunged straight down at nearly the speed of sound. It slammed into a muddy field just outside Goldsboro, driving itself deep into the waterlogged ground. The impact was so violent that the bomb shattered, scattering components across the swamp. Crews later measured the uranium core buried more than 180 feet below the surface. Despite weeks of excavation, that nuclear core was never recovered. The Air Force eventually bought a permanent easement on the land, forbidding any digging that might disturb what remained. Today, the site is quiet farmland, with no detectable radiation, but the heart of a hydrogen bomb still lies somewhere beneath the mud. The second bomb's descent played out in slow motion. Its 100-foot parachute deployed as designed, catching air and dragging the heavy weapon away from the main debris field. The bomb drifted down, snagging in the branches of a tree before coming to rest, mostly intact, on the ground. Unlike its twin, this bomb's controlled fall gave its internal systems time to function as if it had been deliberately released in combat. Each step in the arming sequence unfolded in order, triggered by the forces and altitudes the bomb was engineered to recognize. The difference in descent speed and landing conditions set the stage for what happened inside each weapon. While the first bomb's violent impact destroyed its circuitry, the second bomb's gentle landing allowed its arming mechanisms to engage, bringing the world far closer to disaster than anyone realized at the time. Inside the Mark 39 bomb, safety was supposed to be absolute. Engineers at Sandia National Laboratories built in 6 separate safeguards: mechanical, electrical, and environmental, to prevent a nuclear explosion, unless every step happened in perfect order. The bomb's design called for arming wires to be pulled only by a deliberate drop. Barometric switches waited for the right altitude. A battery would only charge if the bomb sensed free fall and proper descent. Each step was meant to be a locked door, opening only for a planned release. But the events over Goldsboro forced the Mark 39's internal logic to run in reverse. When the B-52 broke apart, the shock yanked out the arming wires, as if the bomb had been purposefully dropped. The bomb's descent, slowed by its 100-foot parachute, allowed the barometric switches to close at the correct altitudes. The battery came to life, sending power through the firing circuit. 5 of the 6 interlocks either failed or were bypassed, one after another, by the very chaos they were meant to resist. Only a single low-voltage switch, known as the Ready Safe switch, stood between the world and disaster. It was designed to be set by the crew before flight, one last manual block in the chain. In this case, it held. The switch stayed in the safe position, breaking the circuit just before the final firing signal could pass through. If that switch had flipped, or if a stray current had jumped the gap, the bomb would have detonated with a force equivalent to over 3 million tons of TNT. The Mark 39's safety net proved frighteningly thin, its final thread held by nothing more than luck and a simple piece of hardware. Military trucks rolled in before sunrise, headlights cutting through the fog along Big Daddy's Road. Armed air police set up a perimeter with rope and warning signs, keeping the curious and the worried at a distance. The Air Force ordered a local family to leave their home, just one farmhouse, but it sat too close to the bomb's resting place for comfort. By noon, more than 100 personnel were on site, including explosive ordnance teams, engineers, and medics. Swampy ground made every step a struggle. Bulldozers and pumps worked around the clock, but water kept seeping into the crater. Over 8 days, crews recovered dozens of detonators and high explosives, logging each part in daily reports. The dig went on for weeks, but the uranium pit from the first bomb stayed buried, unreachable beneath the mud. The military bought the land, posting it off-limits for good. In the aftermath, the Air Force classified the Goldsboro incident as a broken arrow, the official term for an accident involving nuclear weapons. Public statements downplayed the risk, and officials insisted there was no danger of a nuclear explosion. Behind closed doors, the reality was harder to ignore. Internal memos from Sandia National Laboratories questioned whether existing safeguards were truly reliable, especially for bombs carried on continuous alert. Within months, the Pentagon accelerated the development of permissive action links, electronic locks that required secret codes to arm a weapon. President Kennedy quietly ordered a reduction in airborne nuclear alerts, and the 2-man rule for handling warheads became standard. The Goldsboro near miss did not end Operation Chrome Dome, but it forced a reckoning with the limits of safety and secrecy in the nuclear age. Today, nearly 2,000 nuclear weapons remain on alert in the United States, each reliant on complex safeguards and human judgment. One failed switch nearly changed America forever. As technology evolves, the margin for error stays razor thin. What we risk in a moment still echoes for generations. Thanks for watching.